What's up, guys? Welcome back to Entertainment Hub. I'm starting an Urban Legends series where I will shed light on each state's top 10 urban legend stories. Today I'm starting in Pennsylvania. If you'd like a part 2 to this video, leave a comment below and tell me if you've ever been to one of these locations and what your experience was like. Don't forget to like and subscribe for new videos daily. Number 10. Seven Gates of Hell, York, PA. There are two popular versions of the myth, with numerous variants of each. One states that a mental institution used to be located on either Toad Road or Trout Run Road, depending on the source, in Pelham Township, Pennsylvania. It was erected in a remote location so as to isolate people deemed insane from the rest of the world. One day in the 1800s, a fire broke out, and due to its remoteness, firefighters could not reach the hospital in time to save it. Many patients died in the flames, while others escaped and were soon beaten to death. The gate's role in the story is disputed. Some say that the gates were put up by local search parties to trap remaining inmates. Others say that, completely unrelated to the asylum story, an eccentric physician who lived on the property built several gates along a path deep in the forest. Both accounts agree only on one gate being visible during the day, but the other 6 can be seen at night. According to the legend, no one has ever passed the 5th gate, but if they passed all 7, they would go directly to hell. Another story about the gates of hell is of a man in the 1950s who murdered his wife and children with a shotgun and impaled their corpses on the spikes of one of the gates. Before the house was torn down, bullet holes were visible in the garage door and in the wall on the inside of the house where the garage door was located. Number 9. The Green Man, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is one legend that turned out to be true. Residents of South Park area near Pittsburgh during the 1950s often spotted a strange figure walking along Route 351 at night. The figure was a man without a face who allegedly emitted a greenish glow. Locals were frightened by this shocking appearance and his nocturnal habits. The man, Ray Robinson, had been severely electrocuted as a child and lost most of his facial features. He only came out at night due to his disfigurement. Though in reality he did not emit a glow of any sort. He was actually a really nice guy who would chat with anyone who approached him. Though this did not prevent some passerbyers from treating him cruelly or the community from fostering ghost stories about his misfortune. Number 8. Blue Mist Road, Pittsburgh. This is one of Pittsburgh's better known spook spots. There's a blue mist that covers North Park's Irwin Road every night. Here are some stories about it. It was a rally site for the KKK, complete with a hanging tree for unfortunate African Americans. There's an old cemetery nearby, and the headstones of 2 lovers touch in a cold kiss during the full moon. Another version of the story says the dead paramours try to meet, but if they ever succeed, the world will end. The foundation of an old building was once home to a witch. Another house is called the Midget Farm, and allegedly the little folk will angrily chase you away. According to one tale, a man caught his wife cheating and killed her and their kids. He dumped them in a septic tank where his house stood in the mid-1900s. Their ghosts frequent the road. A spectral dog and half-deer, half-human mutant both haunt Blue Mist Road. One story of a bold teen honked his horn to alert the critters he was coming, and later he was found dead, dripping of blood dangling from a hanging tree. The hanging tree has its own lore, as related by a reader that lives nearby the park. The story he was told was that park your car at one end of the road because both ends are blocked off. You're supposed to honk your horn 3 times, and 3 bodies hanging from the lynching tree and human-like figures walk towards you, aka the KKK. I'm not sure how true this actually is. In actuality, Irwin Road is a inlet unpaved lane dotted with some scattered homes along it. It has road closed, no access signs posted on both ends of a 5-mile street. Number 7. Constitution Drive, Allentown. This is a 3-part story. The first urban legend states that a family of strange albinos living along the road, and they attack anyone who comes near their property. Of course, the home of the albinos are said to inhabit is occupied by a completely normal old man, who is very friendly to visitors despite the various attack dog signs. The myth was actually started many years ago by radio DJs to create hype and bring people to the area. The creation of the myth started during Prohibition when moonshiners lived in the woods around Constitutional Drive. Due to the nearby spring water, the street also has a reputation as a hotspot for crime due to its secluded location. It is a frequent setting of all arson, rape, and most of all illegal dumping. It's only natural to blame the constant crime on otherworldly albinos. The second legend of Constitutional Drive is truly paranormal in nature. The story has unclear origins and various witnesses to back it up. Legend says a man was walking his two dogs along Constitution Drive when he was hit by the train that runs across it. The accident tore his leg off and he died of blood loss. His faithful dogs never left his side and died of starvation. He can occasionally be seen stumbling along the road with his dogs, who have glowing red eyes. Some witness reports seeing only red eyes peer out at them from the dense woods. During the winter, multiple reports surface of track marks in the snow, 2 pairs of normal dog prints, but only one single human footprint. The third is a strange whistling sound, also heard on the road. It comes from every direction and has no explanation. It starts and stops at random. Witnesses describe it as melodic and calming, yet deeply disturbing. Another reported phenomenon is the phantom screams of a young girl, but some say this legend arose from the street's previously mentioned crime rate, or turkey vultures. Various EVPs have been captured along the road to back up claims of paranormal activity. Although a few of the road's myths have explanations, it is undeniable that there is something haunting Constitution Drive. Number 6. Bus to Nowhere, Philadelphia. The story of the bus to nowhere picks up the travelers who have experienced awful things in their lives. Things awful enough to push them to the lowest points possible of their despair. Stories have surfaced about passengers who had gotten into a fight with a family member, who then later was killed in a drunk driving accident, suffered a miscarriage as a result of a husband's infidelity, lost everything that their family owned to gambling, or even having committed murder. The bus is not on any route map and no number is displayed on its marquee. It doesn't even belong to the city, it just seems to answer the internal call from an individual in their own personal hell, who just wants to get away from here, to go anywhere but here. When they get on the bus, there is no noise, no conversation, no signs, and usually not even a fare request. There is no indication of where service is to, just a note that service is from the intersection of wherever you are currently standing. Many passengers who have survived the ride report not remembering the driver, or even if there was one, any of the passengers or stops. It's as if time, places, and things have no meaning on the phantom bus. All the passengers can remember is sitting on that seat in their own personal hell. They ride around for hours, days, weeks, even years. Those lucky enough to rouse themselves from the fog report almost seeing to start themselves back to a place of clarity. They pull the cord and end up just where they needed to be. Most patrons who get off the bus have no recollection or memory of even having ridden, just of getting off. Those riders not so lucky just ride around in a state of perpetual despair. Rumor has it that one day the bus will disappear forever, taking all its riders with it. Others claim the bus will just give up waiting and take you to where your troubles began. Either way, that is a one-way ticket with a hefty price. Number 5. The Devil's Road, Chadsford Township. The exact location is hard to determine. Street signs are frequently stolen, making it easy to get lost. But somewhere in the woods of Pennsylvania on the Delaware border is the Devil's Road. Cosart Road is a 2-mile street lined with trees near the Chadsford Township, Pennsylvania. The first thing you'll notice when driving down the single-lane paved road is that the trees all bend away from the road, as though they were pushed away by a powerful energy. And all of the trees that grow away from the road, the most interesting one is called the Baby's Cradle, an old tree with roots protruding out of the soil which resemble a skull when looked at it from the right angle. The locals believe that this was used as an altar for human sacrifice. Unsubstantiated rumors claim that the sacrificed remains of an infant were found at the base of the tree, hence the name. And if you keep traveling up the road, you'll come to the Colt House, a stone building deep in the woods. One story is that the DuPont family owned the large stone mansion in the hills. Supposedly, the DuPonts were so obsessed with keeping their excessive wealth within the family that they practiced inbreeding to prevent any intrusions on their bloodline or bank accounts. The Colt House was where the family lived and where they hid the most disturbing genetic mishaps. Eventually, the DuPonts would abandon the home, leaving it to a satanic cult. It is said that the cult was made up of the super rich, all of who entered the Fostan deals with the devil in order to acquire their wealth. The trees keep the home invisible from the road despite its massive size. A guardhouse surrounded by red pickup trucks is said to be the only visual clue that the house even exists back in the woods. Supposedly, guards are constantly on the lookout for people traveling up and down the road, and explorers report having been chased away by the guards. Those who claim to have seen the house say that the windows are completely blacked out and shaped like upside-down crosses. Acts of vandalism have forced officials to post no trespassing signs all over the road, and on occasion, they've had to put up barricades and threaten violators with heavy fines. Those thinking of doing their own investigation should know that the street is residential and that those living there would prefer to be left alone. After all, not all stories need to be proven, and sometimes it's more fun for a legend to remain a legend. Also, the fines can range up to $1,000. Number 4. Wildwood Cemetery, Williamsport, PA. Located in the historic Williamsport, Pennsylvania, Wildwood Cemetery is steeped in both historical significance and local folklore. The cemetery is split down the middle by a road, creating a unique and uphill hike that allows viewers to appreciate the history of the area. The mythology surrounding the cemetery is also rooted in its split setup, with the west side of the cemetery being the haunted side of the cemetery and the east side being the good side. This is perhaps because the west side tends to have older plots and more history, while the east side of the cemetery tends to have more recent plots. The good side of the cemetery is rumored to have fairy occupants who appear on clear nights, while the bad side has malign spirits, specifically a howling banshee. The cemetery is also rumored to be the final resting place of a local fireman, who was petrified of the idea of being buried alive. His phobia was led to his mausoleum being designed to that it was locked on the outside, but able to be opened from the inside. And it is rumored that if you listen through the walls of the fireman's final resting place, you can hear him shuffling around, waiting for the right time to leave his mausoleum at night and stroll the cemetery. Number 3. The Goblin of Easton, Pennsylvania. This is a short but creepy urban legend with unclear origins. At some point during the early days of Easton, Pennsylvania, there lived a monk. He often took confessions from local residents. However, this monk had evil intentions. He used people's confessions against them. He blackmailed many of his visitors with their confessions, threatening to reveal them unless he was paid. He was eventually caught after beating an elderly woman to death, and he was hanged for his crime. His body almost immediately sprung back to life, contorting into a goblin-like figure. He killed and ate the other monks at his former mission before retreating into the woods, never to be seen again. Number 2. The Storm Hag, Erie, Pennsylvania. According to legend, the Storm Hag lives at the bottom of the lake, close to the Presque Isle Peninsula. She is a hideous she-demon. Her yellow eyes shine in the dark like those of a cat. Her skin is a pale shade of green. Her teeth are sharp and pointed as a shark, able to tear the skin off of her victims. They are also green, which gives her another less common name, Jenny Greenteeth. Her hands have long pointed nails like talons that have a poison with which she can paralyze a poor soul with just one small prick. Her arms are long and strong, and they wrap around her victims, making it impossible for them to escape her flesh-hungry attack. The old legend tells that like a siren before she attacks, she sings a quiet song over the waves that few have survived to retell. Traditionally, the song she sings is, "Come into the water, love, dance beneath the waves, where dwell the bones of sailor lads, inside my saffron caves." And as soon as the seafarer hears this song, the Storm Hag attacks. She calls upon a violent storm that tosses the crew of the vessel around, so she can lurch up from the water and grab them with her long arms. Others tell that she waits the storm out, and when the sailors believe all is calm, she rises from the waves, spitting lightning and winds with such force the entire vessel sinks in a few seconds. Local history has it that on a fall evening of 1782, an Owler ship was caught in a bad storm on the lake, and desperately tried to make it back to port at the Presqu'île Island. It was tossed to and fro violently for more than an hour, and when it was in sight of land, the storm abruptly stopped. The clouds dissipated and the moonlight from the full moon illuminated the water. The sailors could see they were less than a mile from the northern edge of the peninsula, and home. Without warning, the water next to the boat foamed and a storm hag burst forth from the surface. She spewed venom and attacked the crew, unleashing her fury upon them. Within seconds, the ship and its crew were taken beneath the waves to their doom. Witnesses on shore apparently heard the screams of the sailors echoing across the lake just before the vessel disappeared. To this day, some of those who sail the lake near Presqu'île Isle claim to hear phantom screams of the victims who were taken long ago. Number 1. The House on Ridge Avenue, Pittsburgh. According to the legend, the house on 1129 Ridge Avenue was built in the 1860s in a Manchester neighborhood in Pittsburgh, North Side. Charles Congler was the original owner and inhabitant, along with his wife Lydia and their maid Essie. Collinger made a fortune as a direct result of the Civil War and moved his family north to settle in the booming industry town of Pittsburgh. Like many great tragic stories, it ends with an infidelity and a jealous wife. Lydia, after discovering her husband and Essie were having an affair, in a rage took several knives from the kitchen and slaughtered her unfaithful husband and his paramour. She was found by a neighbor several days later, calmly sitting in a chair with the severed head of the maid in her lap. The second story to this is the mad scientist. After the grisly murders, the house was dormant for quite some time until a railroad company purchased it in 1892. Planning to convert it into a housing for their staff. After several workers complained of strange noises and unexplained happenings in the house, the railroad abandoned it and put it up for sale, where it remained on the market for several years until 1900, when Adolf C. Bernrichter, a German-born doctor, purchased the house. Bernrichter was described by his neighbors as a recluse who did not often partake in socializing and spent much of the time in the house by himself. But on the night of August 12, 1901, neighbors reported the sounds of a woman screaming and strange lights in the home. The police were called and were appalled to find the body of a decapitated woman and the doctor. Nowhere to be found. What comes next is straight out of an American horror story, as they discovered a laboratory in the basement with several more body parts and, most horrifyingly, a severed head that Dr. Bernrichter had used in his ghoulish experiments to keep victims of decapitation alive after the fact. The doctor was never seen again, though almost 30 years later, some believe he emerged from hiding in New York. Drunk and claiming to have conducted strange experiments in Pittsburgh, police did not put much weight on the man's claimed identity and eventually released him from prison, deeming him harmless and never to appear in history again. The third part of this story is, thanks to its dark history, which only seemed to grow with each new tenant, the house developed a reputation as a home for wayward spirits. According to some accounts, Thomas Edison himself was one of the many who visited the house to investigate the notorious paranormal phenomenon, along with Julia Murray, a psychic medium of the time. They claimed to encounter a malevolent spirit with the power to harm the living and the ability to travel beyond the confines of the house. It continued to be dormant of any new inhabitants until it was once again purchased, this time by the Equitable Gas Company, again to be converted into apartments for workers. As before, the workers inside reported strange noises, disembodied voices, and 2 workers were discovered dead in the basement of the house. No cause of death or homicide suspect was ever found, and many of the men quickly moved out of the housing. The company continued to maintain a presence in the area, but in November 1927, a massive gas explosion resulted in spectacular damage to the surrounding area, leaving 27 dead and over 500 people injured. The house itself was totally destroyed in the blast, leaving only a crater in the earth where once the house had stood. The site, however, wasn't free of its dark past just because the house was gone. Several locals continued reporting strange occurrences happening in and around the former location of the house, leading some to suggest that the explosion was caused by the devil in an attempt to reclaim the dark and mysterious house for himself. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Which one of these would you go and visit? Or have you? Leave a comment below and tell me your experience. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.